Good morning, afternoon, evening. We hope you all are well. Welcome to Chats with Colleen. I know it's been a crazy time after the recent holiday season. I know it feels like to me, I feel like it's been 8 months and it's really only been 2 weeks. So I hope you all aren't feeling the same. I hope everybody's relaxing into 2025 and is hoping for great gifts and abundance and health and wealth within the new year. Again, thanks for joining us. This is Chats with Colleen. Again, we post bi-weekly episodes and we are looking for guests for the upcoming year. So if you are interested in joining us at any time, please reach out. We have availability in our office, in our studio in Lake Mary, and then we also have available via Zoom. So please reach out the whole time. Commitment is about an hour and it's a lot of fun. It means a lot to us. So reach out via email, text, or call. And this week, it's our second part series that we had with Andrea Hosch, who is a real estate attorney, a realtor. She's an investor. Well, she's also not just a real estate attorney, she's an attorney. Let's put it that way. So, but she specifies in real estate deals, and being a realtor, she owns her own brokerage. And she also is involved with Commonwealth Trust as the trust administrator there. So she has a lot of great details to offer us, a lot of great information for those who are looking in the real estate space, also in land trust, and just want to know what those benefits are, how they can help you, how they can't. In addition to putting properties in trust for subject to deals, which is a big buzz right now. So she has great information. We're so glad that she's joining us again for a two-part episode. So please enjoy and reach out with any questions or concerns and be safe. Take care. Thank you. Chats with Colleen is always here.
So we're going to move into the land trusts side
Perfect.
of it, which I know is the big thing right now. And with all the creative deals that people are doing that I've been seeing, and I get a lot of questions about land trusts, doing insurance, and there's a lot of like misconceptions and misunderstandings about land trust.
Right.
So I want you to clear it up for us.
Well, when you just brought up a few minutes ago about the people that bought the $900,000 house, and now
Yes.
it's becoming a struggle. So we're seeing with land trusts a lot of those types of transfers because when you buy a $900,000 house maybe 2 or 3 years ago, you don't have a lot of equity to turn around, sell it on the market, and be able to pay all the costs and come out with anything.
Right.
People are at least wanting to break even. So we're seeing a lot of investors go in and take those over subject to the mortgage.
Right.
So they're leaving that financing in place, and the people are getting out from under, the burden of the monthly expense by leaving that financing for the investor. It is obviously a little risky on both sides, so hopefully both of them are very educated. And if I'm involved, and I certainly try to educate both sides so that they know, what they need to do and what the risks are. But that is a great option because there's a few different ways you can purchase properties into a land trust and through a trust. And one of them, if the seller is the settler of the trust and then transfers his interest to the end buyer, the transferring document's actually not the deed, because the deed is when he deeded his property into his own trust. So the transferring document becomes the assignment to the new end buyer, which is unrecorded. So doc stamps are still paid on that, but instead of being collected at the county, where the county shows what the purchase price is, those are sent directly to the Department of Revenue with a form provided by the Department of Revenue. So that way it keeps the sale private, and hopefully not a red flag necessarily to the because most mortgages do have a due on sale clause where the lender has said up front, we may call it due if you transfer it. Not that we're definitely will, but we may call it due if you transfer it. So at least it's not a red flag, and the investor understands, hey, this is a risk. It could be called due, but it's not going to necessarily show as a sale on public record if everything's done correctly. And if you keep that financing in, good standing, you're paying it. I mean, I think most lenders don't want a performing asset back. They want a non-performing asset back.
Correct.
So if you avoid the default, then, that's the most important thing.
So those were two questions that I had on here. I had about the sub two, because it's a big thing right
yes.
now. It's a
Yes.
huge deal. And I was going to ask if you recommend putting a sub two property in a land trust.
Definitely. Yeah.
So which you totally do. And I totally agree with that. Because a lot of people, I see them, they're doing these all over the country. They're big in Houston, Texas. They're big in Alabama, areas that are close to us that are, I think, going down. Real estate market's going down too, with the insurance market's volatile. But a lot of them are putting them, I've seen them put them in LLC names. I've seen them put them in personal names. And I'm like, it looks a little bit different to me when they do it that way. I'm sure they have a reasoning, but when I feel it's in the land trust, it's a little bit more protective, and you can really say you're doing it for planning purposes, or some reason like that. And do you think that that is the best way to do it?
I do, definitely. In Florida, I think I don't know why anybody wouldn't do that. Really, I don't know why investors don't purchase all their properties into trusts to keep their anonymity, to take advantage of some of the lien and judgment protection that you get with a land trust. Obviously, LLCs, I always advise you hold your beneficial interest in an LLC if you're an investor, because that's going to give you the asset protection that you need. But separating your different assets in different land trusts is going to give you some lien and judgment protection. It's going to keep them all separated. People aren't going to be able to, put them together
everything
with you.
you have.
Exactly. Because, as investors, that's our biggest asset, is we're trying to amass real estate assets, right? Real estate properties. Whereas, if you're in another kind of, say you're a stock and bond trader, nobody can see how much you have. So why wouldn't you want to keep what you have and what you're using as your vehicle to move you towards wealth or freedom and financially private? So I recommend that for everybody, especially in Florida. Why wouldn't you do it? It's statutory. It's, becoming, many title companies are becoming more and more used to land trusts.
Right.
That is always a challenge. I always say, please make sure your title company is familiar with the trust, because otherwise it's very difficult. And also, when you're doing subject to deals, it's really helpful if you are interacting directly with the seller. Don't expect to close on a subject to deal at the title company the day of closing and
Explain it to them.
Yeah, and the seller goes to sign a trust and he's like, wait a second, why am I signing this? I don't even know you. Because we're having a lot more, like you said, a lot of these transactions and a lot of wholesalers in the middle of these transactions.
Oh, yeah.
So they've dealt with one person, then all of a sudden they're closing with different names on their, as a buyer, and they're being asked to be a part of a trust they don't even understand. So I don't like to be involved. I always ask, hey, do you have a wholesaler in the middle? If so, has anyone spoken to the seller about using a land trust? Because we want to explain things to people up front, so we set the right expectations so they understand how the deal is going to benefit them as well by putting it in the trust, because it does offer the seller some protections. So that to me is important. And I always want to encourage people that are wholesaling to make sure they set the right expectations with these sellers, and make sure who they're wholesaling to is a very responsible investor who is not going to jeopardize this buyer's, credit. That's important. So
right, because they have to trust them. I feel like you're giving somebody a lot of power, and you've just met them.
Yeah.
and
when there's a wholesaler, sometimes the end investor buyer has not ever even met the seller. And sometimes those deals work well, and you've got very, responsible, people in all aspects.
Right.
But sometimes you might have, a newer investor who's been, for whatever reason, they've decided, okay, I'm going to try my hand at this, and they don't really understand the ramifications of everything, how it's a big risk for them and a big risk for the seller. So you really, to me, you have to have a additional, putting you in a fiduciary responsibility
all the way, and they need to be explain that, because a lot of them aren't, and all I hear is, I don't want my loan to be called due, from
Sure.
the,
Of
from the
course.
buyer. Well, of course,
course.
nobody wants that,
Yeah.
but it's, understanding the importance of like everything that you're doing, so when you are doing that, it all goes smoothly, and then if something happens, well, you have a plan behind it.
Right. And when you use a land trust, there are also some other documents we can put in place to benefit the seller. So if the seller is, say they are not really familiar with the end buyer at all, there's not a trust. Sometimes we get people and they know each other, right? They've known each other. And I've been on Zoom calls with the buyer and the seller, and this is how they want to work their deal out, and they have complete trust in each other. That's not usually the case.
Right.
So if the sellers are very concerned, they have a performing asset right now, and it's not that if they're in default or they have a roof they can't put on, it's not that. They're just trying to free up their,
Some money.
Exactly. Or just trying to get out from under a monthly debt.
There you go.
So they're wanting an exit strategy, but they still want it to be safe. So one of the documents that we can put in place will allow them to be able to get the property back if the property goes into default with the proper notices and that type of thing.
Oh.
And that makes them feel a lot better. And then that also encourages the investor, hey, I could lose this property after I've put money into maybe they're going to run it as a vacation rental. So they've put all sorts of money into, making it all cute and putting furniture in and all that.
Right.
Or maybe they're, paid on it for 1 or 2 or 3 years. They don't want to jeopardize the equity that they've built up in this property by then defaulting. So then they have to think about, okay, if they get into a position where they can't pay that mortgage that belongs to somebody else,
Right.
that they have to be ready to implement other exit strategies so there's not a default. And, I think it just holds everybody to more of an accountability.
Right. And make sure that it becomes whatever, occupied or rented, or if they're going to live in it. And I've even seen a lot of people doing it where they're actually living in
Yes.
it. Which I think makes sense with the low interest rates and, the higher interest rate mortgages that are available now. And then the people that have these loans in place, that makes it easier for them. And then maybe later they can, get a regular mortgage or pay or sell it.
We've had a couple clients just in the last 30 days that have done that. I mean, they're investors, but this is a way for them to really upgrade their home to like a $900,000 home. But yet a lot of these investors, they do have some loans out, right, on other rental properties and things that they have.
Yeah.
So they might not look, even though they have a lot of equity and they've got a thriving business, they may not look good on paper to a traditional lender to be able to upgrade to that larger home, more expensive home. So this subject to really gives them, the option to do that in a good way. And I think it really works out well for those people, because most of the people that I see doing that, they've already done a subject to deal, and it's just, they understand the ramifications of it all, and they're willing to move forward with the risks and, really, really make sure they're dotting all their I's and crossing all their T's.
Have you ever seen a subject to deal go bad, where the seller changed their mind or went crazy?
Yes, a couple times. I mean, I've seen, not very often, honestly. So I've been involved with Commonwealth Trust Services since 2016, and we've only had 2 times that a loan got called due, and both of those involved where the borrower had gotten some kind of state assistance, and somehow the lender found out that they were no longer living at the property. So there wasn't even that the mortgage got taken over, it was that it was never supposed to be a rental property. So that's happened. Have seen it one time where one went into foreclosure, and unfortunately I talked to that underlying borrower several times. He was very frustrated, and what had happened was the investor, they had moved into the home, and the investor husband passed away, and the wife was just couldn't handle everything
by herself.
So those are like really outlying ones that it doesn't happen very often. Now, I talked to a title agent recently, because we were talking about all the subject twos and sometimes people not really understanding what their responsibilities are with that, and she had said that recently she had gotten called, like over the past month or 6 weeks, by 4 different sellers who said that already their payments were not being made.
What?
That was not with,
Oh,
that
wow.
was not Commonwealth clients. But I think out there in general, there's so much, oh, this is such a cool thing. And there's a lot of coaches out there coaching that this is a great, which it is, but it's got to be done.
It has to be
properly.
done correctly, and they have to understand what they're doing. And
Yes.
I agree with you. There's a lot of younger people getting into it, or newer. I don't want to say just younger, but newer, people that have never done it before. And they think, like you said, it's going to be easy. I'm going to make all this money.
Yeah.
And you're not really going to make that much money at first.
Right.
You're going to make cash flow, but you're building up, equity, which is long-term in the property.
Yeah.
That's really what I believe it's for. And to get you in and help another person out of a mess that they're in.
Right.
So it kind of works together. And if they're already not making payments, wow.
Yeah. And I really want to encourage everybody to be responsible with it, because like this title agent was saying, she goes, I see the handwriting on the wall. Like, my underwriter is going to stop underwriting these deals.
Right.
Because right now they're still issuing title policies. They're making an exception to the policy for the underlying mortgage. But just recently we did have one title company that balked and said, nope, my underwriter's not going to have anything to do with this. And I talked with another attorney out of state whose state is seen a lot. They don't use land trust there. They buy them in LLCs.
Okay.
Their underwriters are starting to say, yeah, we're not going to insure these. So I think, when things are done responsibly and there aren't complaints and there aren't all of a sudden borrowers left out hanging like they sold a property but their mortgage isn't getting paid, that's when I think we're going to see people in the title insurance going, wait a second, we better revisit whether we're going to underwrite these or not. So I hope that doesn't happen, because it is
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is a great way to purchase properties. It just needs to be done correctly.
Yeah. And both parties, they need to be better communicators, understand it. And probably what you're saying, certain states all don't do land trusts. So that's why I'm seeing other states getting, coming to do insurance with me for sub 2 deals, and they're not in land trust because they don't have them there.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they don't understand them. I mean, you can do a land trust. You can do a land trust is a revocable trust. So you can do a revocable trust in every state, but I think Louisiana. So it's just whether or not people understand how that works. And they might not have the same mechanism like Florida does with sending the doc stamps to the Department of Revenue, with that being able to kind of, keep it private so that it's not a sale on public record. Other states may not have that mechanism. So it just, even if you could do a land trust there, or they did understand the land trust, I still recommend the trust, because placing something in a trust still makes it look better, because you can always place your property into trust for estate planning purposes.
Right.
So I think that's still less of a red flag than somebody selling it outright to an LLC or another individual. That's pretty clear that it's been transferred.
It was sold. Hello.
Right.
Yeah. And I see that a lot, even in Florida. It's in another person's name. They'll do the wraparound and re-put it in someone else's name. And I'm like, oh my God, it's been in 2 other people's names on the same mortgage.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to find something out soon.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with the insurance policy, but then that's the same thing. So the land trust issue, I argue with the insurance companies a lot, because a lot of insurance companies don't want to write policies for houses that are in land trust.
Right.
And it's just because they don't understand it. So
Right.
it's easy to say, no, we don't do this. And I'm like, you're only insuring the house, you're not insuring anything beyond the walls and the yard of that home.
Right.
But it's become an argument. And I just think a lot of people don't understand really what it is. They think they don't really know who the owner is. I'm like, well, that's the whole point.
Right.
To show.
Right. Well, with the insurance company, what I always tell people is, our goal is to keep the transaction private as far as the public goes. But when you're dealing with an insurance company that's saying, hey, we need to know who the underlying person is, then I say, well, show them the trust. You're trying to get a service, and you're working with a service provider who needs to understand how it's working. They're not going to record this on public record.
Right.
So yeah,
and it doesn't go anywhere beyond them. It's not like it's
Exactly.
sold,
Exactly.
they don't sell your information.
Right.
That's illegal. It's confidential.
But typically, I know when we work with you, typically we have success in naming either us as trustee, as the additional insured or the title insured on the property. And then most of our beneficiaries will be like, well, do I need to be on there anyway? I said, no, you don't, because
You don't really.
we'll get the check and it'll go in our trust account and it'll get written out to you. So you don't need to be on there. Who does need to be on there, especially with the subject to, is the borrower.
some way or
So,
fashion, and the
yes.
lender. And that's what, trying to explain to them. No, you don't need to be on there. Then that's just too confusing.
Yeah.
It's already confusing enough putting the trust to show a, mortgage holder, and we're already going to have to argue with them about that. But that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Now, when doing a land trust, does it ever expire? I know that may be a crazy question, but as long as does it just keep going?
Yeah, it depends on your trust agreement. You
Okay.
can put a certain amount of years in your trust agreement.
Okay.
But typically I'm just trying to think, I don't even think our statute has a set term of years, like even 100 years. I think that most trustees, you're going to want to put a certain amount of years and then renew it just because things change. Maybe you want to update your trust agreement, that type of thing. So it can expire. You'd have to look at your trust agreement and see how long it's written for.
Interesting. And you don't recommend somebody doing their own land trust. That's not possible, is that?
You can be the trustee of your own trust. But first of all, you got to make sure that you're doing the trust paperwork correctly, because even though the statute it's fairly simple and not that long, there are certain things that need to be in the trust, and certain things that need to be in the deed. So the paperwork needs to be done correctly. And if you're not, I always tell people, if you're not a professional third-party trustee, what is your goal with the land trust? Because if you're going to be your own trustee, well, then you're not really hiding your ownership.
There you go.
If you're using your brother or your uncle or, your ex-wife, which I've seen a lot of problems, your wife that becomes your ex-wife, I've seen a lot of issues with that, then they're not a professional third-party trustee either. So if you're routinely putting things in their name, people are going to connect the properties together. When you look up a professional third-party trustee, like Commonwealth Trust Services in one county, we might have 100 or 200 trusts. Obviously, the general public knows, well, those aren't all the same beneficiaries. I mean, this is they go to our website, we're
It's
a
a
professional
company.
third-party trustee, we're
Right.
holding it for many, many different people. Whereas when you look up, John Smith as trustee, and he has, several in the kind of those, wherever under his own name, you look him up, he's not anybody. Chances are they're somehow, even if they're not John Smith's properties, they're somehow connected. And that's what you're trying to avoid, and keeping your privacy is being connected. Because when somebody goes, they have a slip and fall and they go sit down with an attorney to see if they want to sue the property owner, they're going to look up and see, well, let's see how many assets this property owner has.
And they're
if
not
they
going to
can-
have any way to count, because they can't, like you said, they know it's a professional company, so they don't own all these properties.
Right. But if they can connect a bunch of properties together, even with the same non-professional third-party trustee, then chances are you're more of a target.
Right. But I had two insurance companies in the last month say, oh, this company owns a lot of houses. I was like, they don't own all those houses. So, and I'm, it's just to say, like, these are insurance company, and like
They don't know the law.
They
so
don't
we
know
would
the
have
laws.
to cite them the statute.
And we try to explain to them, but I even have clients that say, oh, so-and-so owns my house. No, they don't.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to.
It's even a client, and I'm saying, well, you actually own the house. Like, it's in a land trust, but you're the owner, or your LLC.
Yeah.
In the bottom of those trust documents, you read in there, you're the owner.
Yeah. Yeah.
You make the decisions, and you're responsible for it.
Right. It's an education on a constant basis. So we're always trying, and I understand. I mean, especially,
It's
it takes
confusing.
a while for an
Yes.
investor to really wrap their mind around the trusts. And we've had many that have used them repeatedly, and they'll still come to me with some nuanced questions. And for people that are new in investing, I mean, there's a lot of information when you're investing, right? A lot of different
There's a
things
lot.
to learn and understand. And even the insurance part, they even forget to think about that. So I have to go over it, quite a bit, and that's okay. I mean, that's kind of
That's
what
part
I
of it.
do
Advise them.
Right, as a third-party trustee, just to remind them that, hey, you're the beneficiary. You direct us as the title owner, trustee, yes, but you direct us. So everything. A lot of times, people will, their realtor will send us something to sign, and before we even have a chance to kind of look up, okay, what client is this? Who do we need to reach out to? they're calling us going, my realtor sent you something and you didn't sign it yet. I'm like, we're not going to sign anything.
You have to tell us
until we get it in writing from you that you approve it. So, even some of our old established clients, they're like, well, that's my realtor and that's who I work with. I'm like, yeah,
I get it.
And then once in a while, I will send something to, one of our clients that has a bunch of trusts, and his realtor just sent me something, and he'll be like, not approved. That's not the wording I wanted. And I'm like, oh.
Thank God you didn't do it.
I know.
But that's the thing. So the client is still responsible. And I said,
Absolutely.
they're signing it because you're authorizing them to. They're not
Exactly.
signing it because they agree with anything or they're, looking at it. That's not their job.
Like, and even when when you send us these routine ones that we've signed a million times, we always
You
reach
have to
out
ask
to the
it to the client and
Yep.
make sure, just because it's customary. But, and it's just re-educating the general public about that. And so a land trust, you can put property in land trust, so homes.
Just a real estate interest.
A real estate interest. Could you put a lot in a land trust?
Yep. Anything that's recordable. So a deed. So a deed to a lot, a deed to any kind of property, real estate interest, a mortgage. We have people that lend through a trust.
Okay.
And then the mortgage is recorded, and we put the specifics in the trust. A manufactured home can only go in a trust if it's on land that's deeded, because otherwise it's just a vehicle, right? A motor vehicle.
It's a car. Yeah.
Right. So
That's what I have to explain all the time. Because the mobile home manufactured, even if it's on land, they depreciate because they're kind of like a vehicle. So even when people are buying them for so much money, they own the land. So they're buying some of the land value, and they're buying the market value because it's so crazy right now with finding affordable homes. So that's...
Yeah. So it's not actually the manufactured home that goes, it does go into the trust, but because it's attached to the land and the deed.
And so that's how you get the land trust. And so if it's in like an RV park or in a park, because they don't own the land, they rent.
Right. Then it can't go in the trust.
Good to know. That's really good information. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you for land trust services, how can they do that?
So they can, first of all, look at our website. So we are at yourlandtrust.com. And we have our phone number, email, everything is on there. You can also, the best way, honestly, is to email us, because our general email box, which I always encourage everybody who needs anything signed to send it there, so it has many eyes looking at it,
right,
is admin, ADMIN, at commonwealthlandtrust.com. So a lot of times if they have questions or if they want to talk to me, they can send me an email and say, hey, I'd really like to talk to you about a few things. When is a good time? Because if they just call the office, a lot of times I'm either not in the office or I'm in the middle of something.
Or you're on the phone.
Helping
somebody else.
Yeah. So they can also call our office, 407-755-1010. And we have a few people that work with us, but our main admin, Kathy, she's very knowledgeable, and she can answer, most basic questions that new people will want to know. But if there's anything more intricate than that, then she'll usually take their name and number, or she'll shoot me an email and I'll get back to them. But one thing I was going to say is a lot of people, especially lately, have been wanting estate planning trust.
Right.
They want to put their property into trust, and then a lot of other different things. So those aren't the kind of trusts that we do. Now I do refer people to different estate planning attorneys depending on their needs. And we work with an estate planning attorney to make sure that their property is titled correctly. Like maybe they're going to title it in a land trust and the beneficiary is going to be their living trust. But just, we've had a lot of, on a weekly basis, we get those questions. People are like, oh, but I want to, can you do my will? And can you do, can we put all these other things in our trust? And that's, we do land trust.
Specifically for properties and land.
Exactly.
That's... Yeah, and I could see how they would be confused because they just say it's a trust.
Right. And a lot of people, they've got a lot of assets, and they'll sit down with me and they'll have several assets in their different LLCs and different, in their own names. And they do need some land trusts, but they also need a lot more than that. And I'm happy to work with somebody to really get them the plan that they need overall
for everything.
Protect their assets. Yeah.
That's good to know that you can refer people to that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I need your services for that. I need your referral for that.
Almost everybody does.
I'm working. I know it's something nobody wants to think about, honestly.
Exactly.
So it's good that you are able to refer and, realize that they need that help. Yeah. That's good. And for your real estate brokerage, what is the phone number and the contact information
So
for you?
for the real estate, they can email me at andrea@pineappleplacerealty.com. And then our website is Pineapple Place Realty. And then honestly, you can Google me, and my cell phone number is everywhere, but it's 407-497-8563. So
Thank you. So this was such great information. I'm so glad we were able to cover both topics.
yes, me too.
And we have to plan again. I would really like to do like a workshop, even if it was just like 2 or 3 hours on like the land trust and giving people like, just a concise information to lead to more questions, which it hopefully could lead to more business, for you and then potentially me in the end, but helping them to make sure they really understand what they're doing, doing a land trust and especially sub 2 properties. Cause I would hate to see the market like go down on that. Like you're saying, the title companies not wanting to offer those, closings and stuff. That would be a bad thing for a lot of people.
I actually already have a great 2 to 3 hour presentation, depending on the questions.
Oh,
that
perfect.
we could do sometime. We could either do it because we have that training room in the back of our office, so we could do it there and also have it live at the same time.
Perfect.
So that's we've done that in the past. We actually haven't done it since COVID, and we need to do it again.
I think it's a great idea now. Like there's so much need for it. So thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening and joining us. If you haven't already, please share, subscribe, and like our episodes and our podcast. Also, leave a review. It will be so helpful to us, and we would so appreciate it. Also, if you want to join us at any time, we're open to any guests joining us in person and on Zoom. We post and record episodes bi-weekly, so that's twice a month. Also, they're posted on our socials, which is Facebook, Secured Insurance Group, Instagram, Colleen Insurance Lady. This podcast was hosted by myself, Miss Colleen Pacheco, and recorded and produced and edited by Sean Spazzato. Our podcast cover art was designed and created by Norma Pacheco, and our intro and outro music is created by Lounge Bar by Geronic. Goodbye.